In the vast, silent darkness between the stars, a scream tore through the void. It wasn't a sound, but a desperate pulse of pure energy, a psychic cry for help that rippled across the very fabric of space itself. Those who heard it, the telepathic and the sensitive, knew what it meant. Somewhere in the cold, uncaring expanse, an entire world was dying. Floating in orbit around the ancient, gleaming world of Thessera Prime was the Galactic Union Assembly Hall, a breathtaking monument to thousands of years of peaceful cooperation. Inside its crystalline walls, Ambassador Wren of the Thesseri people stood before hundreds of gathered representatives. His 4 slender arms trembled, and his normally lustrous silver skin had turned a chalky white, a sign that even his composed species recognized as pure terror. "The Harrow has awakened," Wren announced, his voice translated instantly for every delegate, cracking under the strain. 3 colonies have gone dark in the past rotation. The 4th is under siege as I speak." A wave of panicked whispers spread through the chamber like a shockwave. The Harrow. The name was a curse, a boogeyman even for species who had never encountered them. They were an ancient scourge, a swarm of self-replicating machines born from some forgotten war, programmed with only 2 directives: consume and replicate. They had been dormant for generations, sleeping in the dead zones between the spiral arms of the galaxy. Now, they had returned. Counselor Vesh, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering magnetic field, pulsed with agitated light. "We must evacuate the remaining populations immediately. There is no defense against the Harrow." "We have tried," Wren replied, his voice breaking. "They adapt too quickly. Every weapon, every tactic we employ becomes useless within hours. Our best military minds calculate a 0.003% chance of survival if we engage them directly." The chamber fell into a horrified silence. High Chancellor Mira, the ancient and respected elder of the Assembly, raised one of her many sensory appendages, calling for order. "Then we have no choice," she stated, her words hanging in the air like a death sentence. "We must petition for aid beyond our usual channels." The implication was terrifying. "You cannot mean—" Vesh began, his energy field flickering violently. "The Deathworlders," Mira confirmed, her tone leaving no room for argument. "We must contact Earth." The chamber erupted in protests. Earth was forbidden territory, a planet so dangerous it was classified as a Class Omega death world. Its inhabitants were considered violent, chaotic anomalies, creatures who not only survived but thrived by breathing corrosive gases, living under crushing gravity, and possessing a primal aggression that frightened even the Union's most hardened warriors. The standing order for millennia had been clear: avoid Earth at all costs. But these were not normal times. Halfway across the galaxy, aboard the human vessel Relentless, Captain James Harding was enjoying the simple pleasure of his morning coffee when the call came through. He was a stocky man with graying hair and the kind of eyes that had seen far too many battles. His ship, a retrofitted military cruiser, was one of Earth's few deep space-capable vessels, currently charting the outer rim, a long, long way from home. "Captain, you need to see this," called out his communications officer, Lieutenant Priya Desai. She was young but brilliant, fluent in 17 languages, including 3 that no one else on Earth could even speak. Harding set down his mug and walked over to her station. "What have you got, Priya?" "A message, sir, from something calling itself the Galactic Union. They're requesting immediate assistance with a crisis." Priya's dark eyes were wide, not with fear, but with sheer unadulterated excitement. "Sir," she whispered, "this is first contact." Harding felt his pulse quicken, a familiar thrum of adrenaline. Humanity had known for decades they weren't alone. They'd picked up scattered transmissions, detected artificial structures around distant stars. But this was the first time anyone had actually spoken to them directly. "Play it," he ordered, his voice steady. The message was brief and terrifying. A mechanical plague, the Harrow, was consuming entire colonies. All standard defenses had failed. They needed help. The message was clearly reluctant, almost pained, as if asking was the absolute last resort. But it was the final line that truly caught Harding's attention. We understand humans possess unique capabilities for unconventional warfare. Please respond if able. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Frank Okonkwo, let out a low whistle from his console. They sound desperate, boss. Must be pretty bad if they're calling us. Harding's mind was already racing. How far are they? He asked his navigator. 36 hours at maximum burn, Captain, replied Ensign Tom Reeves, his knuckles white on the controls. Harding looked around his bridge. His crew was small, just 40 people in total. The Relentless was tough, but it wasn't designed for a large-scale war against an unknown enemy. Yet on every face he saw the same mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was it. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for, their chance to prove they belonged among the stars. Priya, send a response, Harding commanded, his decision made. Tell them we're on our way. He then hit the ship-wide intercom, his voice ringing with authority. All hands, this is the captain. We have received a distress call from alien civilizations under attack. We are the closest human vessel, and we will respond. Battle stations in 6 hours. Harding out. As the crew scrambled to prepare for the unknown, Harding returned to his ready room. He pulled up every scrap of data Earth had on the galactic neighborhood. It was sparse, mostly guesswork based on long-range signals. But one old intelligence file caught his eye. It was a report speculating on why, after all this time, no alien species had ever made official contact. The conclusion was unsettling, and yet oddly amusing. They considered Earth too dangerous, too unpredictable, too violent to approach. A grim smile crossed Captain Harding's face. If the galaxy thought humans were dangerous when they were just trying to be peaceful, they were about to get a real surprise. They were about to see what humanity could do when they were actually trying to help. He finished his coffee in one long, determined gulp and headed back to the bridge. Outside, the stars began to stretch and blur as the Relentless accelerated into the darkness, racing toward a war that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. Thanks for watching, everyone. This is just the beginning of an epic story. If you want to see what happens when the Deathworlders of Earth answer the call, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next part. We'll see you in the next one. The Relentless dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Thessery system, and what Captain Harding saw through the viewport made his blood run cold. Where there should have been a thriving colony world, there was only a sphere of writhing black metal. Millions of geometric shapes moved in perfect synchronization, consuming everything they touched and replicating endlessly. The Harrow swarm looked like a living nightmare, beautiful and terrible in its precision. My God, whispered Tom Reeves, his hands frozen over the navigation controls. How do you fight something like that? Before Harding could answer, a sleek vessel appeared beside them. It was elegant, all flowing curves and bioluminescent panels that pulsed with soft blue light. A transmission came through almost immediately. Human vessel, I am Ambassador Wren of the Thesari Conquered. Please maintain your current position while we establish proper containment protocols. The translator gave Wren's voice a musical quality, though Harding could detect the underlying tension. Containment protocols? Frank Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. Captain, they're treating us like a biohazard. Priya was already analyzing the transmission metadata. Sir, their message included atmospheric warnings. They're concerned about our biology. Apparently, standard human environments are lethal to most species in the Union. Harding activated his comm system. Ambassador Wren, this is Captain James Harding of Earth. We received your distress call. What do you need from us? There was a pause, longer than signal delay could explain. When Wren spoke again, his voice carried a weight of reluctant hope. Captain Harding, the Harrow cannot be defeated through conventional means. They analyze and counter every logical strategy within hours. Our projections show complete colony loss within 3 planetary rotations. We called you because humans are known to employ tactics that defy logic. Frank snorted. They called us crazy. That's what he means. They called us creative, Harding corrected, though he was smiling. Ambassador, we'll need tactical data on the Harrow. Everything you have, like transmitting now. Please dock with our command carrier, the Bright Cascade. We have prepared an isolated section for your crew. I must warn you, direct contact between our species may prove fatal to one or both parties. As the data flooded into the Relentless's computers, the bridge crew began analyzing the Harrow's behavior patterns. What they saw was both impressive and disturbing. The machines operated with mathematical perfection, always choosing the optimal solution to any problem. They had fought 17 different species and won every engagement through superior calculation and adaptation. They're like the universe's best chess computer, Priya observed. Always 3 moves ahead, always picking the winning strategy. Then we need to stop playing chess, Harding replied. Tom, take us to that carrier. Frank, start thinking about strategies that make no sense. The more illogical, the better. The Bright Cascade was massive, a city in space housing thousands of Union personnel. The Relentless docked in a specially sealed bay. When Harding and his senior officers stepped through the airlock, they found themselves in a transparent corridor. On the other side of the clear walls, dozens of alien species watched them with obvious fear and fascination. Ambassador Wren waited at the end of the corridor. He stood behind another transparent barrier, his silver skin shimmering under the artificial lights. Up close, Harding could see that Wren had no mouth as humans understood it. Instead, a series of membranes on his neck vibrated to produce sound. Captain Harding, thank you for coming. Though I must confess, seeing you without protective equipment is disturbing. Your atmospheric requirements would kill most beings in this facility within minutes. Harding looked at his crew. They were breathing normally, comfortable in what they considered standard conditions. Ambassador, we mean no harm. We're here to help. I believe you, Wren replied, but you must understand what you represent to us. Your planet has gravity that would crush the Thesari. Your oceans contain salt concentrations that would dissolve our flesh. Your predators hunt for sport. You survive through controlled violence and adapt through conflict. You are everything the Galactic Union has tried to evolve beyond. Frank crossed his arms. And yet here you are asking for our help. Because sometimes the universe requires violence, Wren admitted quietly. The Harrow cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be negotiated with. They can only be stopped, and we do not know how to stop them. Priya pulled up a holographic display of the battle data. Ambassador, I notice the Union fleet is maintaining defensive formations around the remaining colonies. Standard protection protocols. Yes, our military doctrine is built on efficiency and preservation, minimal casualties, maximum resource conservation. That's why you're losing, Harding said bluntly. The Harrow can predict efficient strategies. They've evolved to counter logical thinking. But humans didn't evolve in an efficient environment. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to survive through adaptation, improvisation, and occasionally doing things that made absolutely no sense. A new figure appeared on the other side of the barrier. This one was taller than Wren, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted between colors. I am Fleet Commander Zara of the Velothi Defense Corps. Captain Harding, are you suggesting we abandon military doctrine entirely? I'm suggesting you let us show you a different approach. Harding gestured to his crew. We're 40 humans on one ship. You have thousands of vessels, but I guarantee we can do something the Harrow has never seen before. Zara's skin flashed red, a sign of agitation that the translation software helpfully noted. And what would that be? Frank grinned. Tactical stupidity. Organized chaos. The kind of plans that work precisely because they shouldn't. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that were hard to read across species lines. Finally, Wren spoke. You have 6 hours before the Harrow reaches the last colony. If you have a plan, we will listen. As the meeting continued, Harding outlined his strategy. With every point he made, the aliens became more agitated. His plan violated every principle of space combat. It wasted resources, created unnecessary risks, and relied on timing that bordered on impossible. By any logical standard, it was suicidal, but logic was exactly what the Harrow expected. And humans had never been very good at meeting expectations. The bridge of the Relentless hummed with quiet intensity as Captain Harding watched the clock count down. 3 hours remained before the Harrow reached the final Thesari colony, a world called Haven's Rest, where 2 million souls waited for either salvation or extinction. Around them, the Union fleet held their careful formations, thousands of ships arranged in geometric perfection, every vessel calculating the optimal firing solutions and defensive positions. They looked invincible, and that was precisely why they would fail. Harding opened a channel to the entire human crew. This is it, people. Everything we say and do in the next few hours will determine how the galaxy sees humanity for generations to come. They called us because they're desperate, because we're different. Let's show them what different really means. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Rebecca Stone wiped her hands on her coveralls and grinned at her team. You heard the captain. Time to make this bucket do things the manual says are impossible. She had spent the last 2 hours rewiring the ship's power systems in ways that would horrify any safety inspector. The Relentless was about to perform maneuvers that violated 3 laws of physics and probably several interstellar treaties that humanity had never signed. On the observation deck of the Bright Cascade, Ambassador Wren stood with Fleet Commander Zara and watched the human ship drift seemingly aimlessly through space. Its trajectory made no sense. It wasn't moving to intercept the Harrow, wasn't taking up any defensive position, just floating like debris caught in an invisible current. They're doing nothing, Zara said, her skin pulsing anxious yellow. The Harrow advance continues and the humans are simply drifting. Wren's 4 arms gestured in a pattern that meant contemplation among his people. Or they're doing something we cannot comprehend. Remember what Captain Harding said. Tactical stupidity. Perhaps this apparent inaction is the strategy itself. Aboard the Relentless, Priya Desai was coordinating with a network of human communication satellites that Earth had scattered throughout this sector over the past decade. Nobody in the Union knew they existed. They were primitive by galactic standards, barely functional. But they formed a web of sensors that gave the humans information the aliens didn't have. She watched the Harrow swarm moving in its perfect mathematical patterns and smiled. Captain, I've got their timing down to the microsecond. They're predictable because they're perfect. Good, Harding replied. Frank, are we ready? Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo checked his tactical display. As ready as we'll ever be for a plan this insane, sir. The Harrow swarm approached Haven's Rest like a tide of darkness. Each individual unit was no larger than a human hand, but there were billions of them, maybe trillions. They moved in waves, each wave calculated to overwhelm specific defenses. The Union fleet prepared to engage, their weapons charged, their shields at maximum. Every ship knew its role. Every captain had run the simulations. They would lose, but they would lose efficiently, buying time for the evacuation that was already underway. Then the Relentless did something no military computer could have predicted. It fired its engines at full power directly toward the planet, not the Harrow. It accelerated past the Union fleet, past the colony's defensive satellites, straight into the gravity well of Haven's Rest itself. Warning alarms screamed across Union channels. The humans were going to crash. What are they doing? Zara demanded, her skin flashing crimson with alarm. Wren had no answer. He could only watch as the human ship dove toward the planet's surface, engines burning so hot they left a visible trail through space. At the last possible moment, when collision seemed inevitable, the Relentless pulled up hard. The maneuver should have torn the ship apart. The G-forces should have killed everyone aboard, but somehow the vessel held together, skimming barely 100 meters above the planet's highest mountains before rocketing back into space. The real genius of the move became clear seconds later. The Relentless had used the planet's gravity like a slingshot, but in the process it had scattered thousands of metallic fragments in its wake, debris from the ship's heat shields, pieces of armor plating that had been deliberately loosened, even some of the crew's personal metal objects, all left floating in a seemingly random pattern around the planet. The Harrow swarm, moving in its perfect formation, encountered the debris field. For the first time in recorded history, the machines hesitated. Their sensors detected the metal fragments and calculated thousands of possible threats. Were they mines? Weapons platforms, decoys? The swarm's unified intelligence tried to analyze the pattern, searching for the optimal response. But there was no pattern. Humans had simply thrown junk into space. While the Harrow calculated, the Relentless completed its loop and came screaming back through the swarm itself, weapons blazing. But it wasn't firing at the machines. It was firing at empty space, creating explosions that served no tactical purpose except to generate chaos. Electromagnetic pulses rippled through the void. Radiation bursts scattered in random directions. The careful mathematical order of the battlefield dissolved into noise and confusion. Now, Harding shouted. All Union vessels fire at will. Don't aim for the swarm. Aim for where they're going to be if they panic. Zara understood in that moment. The Harrow could predict logical responses, but they couldn't predict panic. because they had never encountered it. And right now, flooded with conflicting sensor data, surrounded by unpredictable threats, the swarm was experiencing something close to machine confusion. The Union fleet opened fire, not in their careful formations but in wild, uncoordinated barrages. Ships broke formation, creating gaps that invited attack but also created firing lanes that shouldn't exist. The Harrow tried to adapt, tried to find the optimal counter-strategy, but there was no optimal response to chaos. Every calculation led to contradictions. In the engine room of the Relentless, Rebecca Stone watched her readout spike into the red. "Captain, we're tearing ourselves apart." "Just a little longer," Harding called back. The ship shuddered as another round of explosions rippled through its hull. They were taking damage, real damage, but they were also learning. Every hit taught them something about the Harrow. Every near miss revealed a weakness. Priya's sensors detected a change in the swarm's behavior. "Captain, they're adapting." "They figured out our pattern." "Good," Harding replied calmly. "Because we're about to change it again. Tom, execute maneuver Delta 9. Tom Reeves looked at his captain with wide eyes. "Sir, that's the one we made up in the cafeteria as a joke." "I know. Do it anyway." The Relentless spun on its axis and began flying backward, firing its engines toward the swarm while its weapons pointed away from it. The ship spiraled in a corkscrew pattern that served no tactical purpose except to be completely, utterly unpredictable. Other Union vessels, inspired or perhaps infected by human madness, began attempting their own improvised maneuvers. Ambassador Wren watched the battle unfold with a mixture of horror and awe. They're not following any doctrine. They're not calculating optimal strategies. They're simply refusing to let the Harrow predict them. "It's working," Zara breathed, her skin shifting to amazed gold. "By all logic, we should be losing. But the Harrow cannot counter what has no counter. They're designed to defeat intelligence, but humans are fighting with controlled stupidity." The battle raged for 2 more hours. The Relentless took hit after hit, its hull scarred and smoking. 3 Union vessels were destroyed, their crews evacuated just in time. But slowly, impossibly, the Harrow swarm began to break apart. Unable to predict human behavior, unable to counter tactics that made no sense, the machines started making errors. They fired at empty space. They clustered when they should have spread out. They tried to retreat when they should have advanced. When the last Harrow unit finally went dark, consumed by its own confusion, the comm channels erupted with alien voices speaking in languages Priya had never heard. But she didn't need translation to understand. They were celebrating. Captain Harding slumped in his chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. Around him, his crew was doing the same, the adrenaline finally wearing off. They had done it. Against impossible odds, using tactics that defied every military principle, they had won. Ambassador Wren's voice came through, quiet with emotion. "Captain Harding, on behalf of the Galactic Union, I thank you. You have saved millions of lives today, but more than that, you have taught us something profound. We have spent millennia trying to be more logical, more efficient, more perfect. We forgot that the universe itself is chaos, and sometimes the only way to survive chaos is to embrace it." Harding smiled tiredly. "Ambassador, humans learned that lesson a long time ago. On a planet that throws hurricanes, earthquakes, and predators at you, you either learn to adapt or you die. We're survivors, and now if you'll have us, we'd like to be your friends." There was a pause, and then Wren replied with warmth in his musical voice. "Captain, I believe the galaxy is ready to meet humanity. Welcome to the Union. Welcome home." As the Relentless limped toward the nearest repair station, escorted by a dozen Union vessels, the crew looked out at the stars with new understanding. They were no longer alone. They were no longer the strange creatures from a death world that others feared. They were heroes. They were teachers. They were exactly what they had always been. Human beings doing impossible things because no one had told them they couldn't. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 space stations, beings of every shape and size learned a new word: human. It meant chaos and courage, stupidity and genius, weakness and strength all mixed together. It meant hope when logic offered none. It meant that sometimes, just sometimes, the best solution was the one that made absolutely no sense at all. The galaxy had mocked Earth, called them Deathworlders, feared their very existence. But when darkness came and perfect logic failed, Those same Deathworlders had fought back with the one weapon no machine could ever counter, the beautiful, terrible, wonderful chaos of the human spirit.